So we have Doug and Ray with us this morning, as you can see, and we're going to turn this over to them now. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning, Barry. Pretty good here.
Good. And good evening, Ray.
Good morning, good evening. How's it going?
Yes, good, thanks. Now, we're going to talk about two-factor authentication today, so we'll turn this over to you now. Take it away for us, please.
Terrific. Thanks, Barry. Ray, we've had plenty of conversations about security, and we know how important it is. Certainly in our business at Oz Hosting, we're frequently talking to business owners that have had some kind of security event. There's always that tendency, I think, to have the most convenient but often the poorest form of security that you feel that you can get away with. And we see this a lot with business owners. One of the comments that often comes back to me is that there's a sense amongst small business operators that they're kind of too small to be interesting to the bad guys. And I think what that misses is that the bad guys actually don't know you're small until they're in your business. The attacks on businesses these days tend to be highly automated, so they're pinging networks and they're just looking for insecurity, for vulnerabilities, a way in. And when they find that, then they will learn more about the business, and then there'll be some kind of a security event where potentially email services are compromised, bank accounts are compromised, and so on. And this can get extremely costly. So, we've certainly spoken in the past about passwords and using password management tools. And, I think we talked about LastPass and Dashkey and several other commercial services that are out there.
Got that almost right down now. And turned up.
They're still talking about a password. As we know, passwords are always going to be compromised somewhere along the way. Somebody's going to find out.
A lot of noise, yeah, but it seems to have
gone
now.
The next step up the ladder, I guess, in being a little bit more secure is to have other factors of authentication. So if we think about being secure, there are some things about our security profile where we could suggest that security should be looking at something we are, something we have, and something we know. And when we combine those factors, that's when we get into multi-factor authentication, and then we're able to make any service that we access a lot more secure. So I kind of touched on it there, but would you like to give us a definition of multi-factor authentication?
Sure. So let's start off with the reality factor, sort of understanding that usernames and passwords are inherently not secure. They are easily hackable with the resources that are available on the internet today. So just to give you kind of an idea to anyone watching, if you tell me that you have a Facebook account, and if you do not have some other kind of security, prevention measures in place, I can spin up a server on Amazon Web Services, install a little bit of software from the dark web, and in essence, keep trying to log in to Facebook using well-known data already available to you, available about you online, and eventually log into your account. It doesn't take a lot of energy. It probably cost me maybe $15 US to be able to run hundreds of different hard drives all simultaneously, just logging into your server. And I would be using something we call onion routing to be able to log in from many different locations that are all seemingly reasonable to the server in Facebook at Facebook's headquarters, to let them know that I'm trying to log in from the location that you would be from, and that's all information I can find out about you publicly. So usernames and passwords are inherently insecure, and the more we move along in the world where we're going to be and have more and more digital identities, we need to be much more cautious about how to do that. And that's where you're really talking about, Doug, of this next stage of instead of having greater convenience, having a little bit less convenience, because more security is always less convenient, having a little bit more inconvenience with something like multi-factor authentication. And so multi-factor authentication then is just the idea of implementing an additional checkpoint, just like any other security checkpoint. You go to the airport, you go through different checkpoints, and this is just an additional checkpoint to identify that you're the person who is attempting to log in to that particular web service. And this comes down to logging into your phone, so a specific device, a computer, phone, tablet, as well as into any particular website or service as well. So that's all that multi-factor is. It's just an additional checkpoint. And there are different ways that it's been implemented, and we'll talk about those today. And do you want to do that now, Doug? Is kind of tell us a little bit about the different types of second factor or multi-factor authentication protocols that are out there?
Sure, absolutely. And no doubt our audience, our business owners are going to be pretty familiar with all these already. One of the most common ones and used by the banking sector all over the world is to have a token that just simply generates a randomized key number. And so when you log into your bank account, if you're going to do a particular type of transaction, it will say, well, you need to enter the token for that particular account, and you'll have your token, and you can just enter the keyword, the key numbers. The numbers will stay on the screen for probably 30 or 60 seconds, long enough for you to use them and for them not to sort of kick through to the next screen before you can enter it. And that's a very simple second factor of authentication. It obviously has a little bit of a risk element to it. Potentially is the string of characters that is there completely unpredictable, completely randomized. Indeed, it may not be. It could be possible to monitor a token for 30 days, 40 days, and for somebody with decent compute power to figure out what the sequence of numbers are starting to appear to be. Maybe not exact, but they might be able to get rather close to that. Other factors of authentication that we'd be very familiar with are the SMS. So again, this is used in banking, and it's the ability, obviously, just to send a secure code to your mobile phone, and that I'd say my view is that looks to me as though it's starting to fall out of favour a little bit. Maybe it's not as secure as it could be. So Ray, I'd just ask you, just before we step through some of the other authentication factors, what's your take on SMS and its usefulness today?
Is your computer driving you crazy? Is it slow or doing things you didn't expect? Well, having a computer crash or pick up a virus can be a complete nightmare for a business, so having someone local you can trust to get you up and running again is critical. The dedicated team of experts at Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West will put your mind at ease from the moment you walk through the door and will get your problem solved in no time with a 100% guarantee on their work. Laptops, tablets, PCs, whatever you have, Roger and the team can fix it for you. So visit them today at 236 Bridge Street, Newtown. Can't get in to see them? No worries. Just call them on 4642 1331 and they'll come to you. Toowoomba Troubleshooters, Toowoomba West, on the web at www.computertroubleshooters.com.au/Toowoomba West.
If you've lost your income or had a change of earning capacity through no fault of your own and are struggling with debt that you can no longer handle, you probably feel a bit like this ant. If the struggle is getting you down and you feel overwhelmed, there is an answer. Central Liaison has helped thousands of people break free of the debt struggle by handling their debt for them. Freeze all interest, stop the harassing calls from the bank and start enjoying life again. Call them today on 0409 344 070 for a confidential, obligation-free chat about how Central Liaison can help you take your life back. The number again, 0409 344 070. Call them now.
Oz Hosting is proud to support Switched On IT in bringing practical help to Australian businesses. We're talking to literally hundreds of businesses every day about their IT services, how to make them more efficient, how to make their businesses more efficient, and how to protect their valuable data. If you'd like your IT services securely hosted right here in Australia and expertly managed, talk to Oz Hosting.
Sure. I think that as we make our way forward from SMS to email, second factor, there's an important reality that SMS is inherently insecure. We can spoof a number. For example, right now I can text you from my Skype account, and you would never know that it was from my Skype account. You would just see my phone number coming across, and you'd get a text message. I can spoof any number of different types of numbers through different services, and therefore your SMS is by that, just by that mechanism, insecure. I can make someone believe and receive text messages on your behalf by interjecting a little bit of code in there. But I use this big caveat. If your service supports nothing but second factor through SMS, I still recommend that you activate it because it's better to have any security beyond a username and password that is an email address or some kind of username and password, which is inherently insecure, to having nothing. It's better than nothing. So I say use it, but I would absolutely encourage whoever your service provider is, whatever service it is that you're using that has SMS, you should write them a message and say, hey, by the way, I've set up SMS second factor authentication, but it would be really great if you added a multi-factor authentication that wasn't tied to an inherently insecure system, which is the mobile network authentication system. Yeah,
and I think certainly in Australia we've had situations where people have actually lost their mobile phone account. So in other words, a bad actor has transferred their mobile phone account from one carrier to another. They've obviously harvested enough information to get enough ID points to convince the gaining account carrier to provide the information to the losing account carrier to convince the two parties that this is a legitimate transfer of a phone service. And then having taken control of the phone service, they then if they have been able to crack their email and they've through that been able to crack their bank account access, then the final step in the process is to transfer the mobile phone over. And if that's relatively straightforward, and oftentimes when people have got that far, it's not too difficult to transfer from one carrier to a next a mobile phone account, and then you have it. Then you get the text message to your mobile phone if you're the bad guy, and a bank transfer is relatively straightforward. And we've certainly seen that happen to small businesses in Australia. But I agree, a second factor authentication level is considerably superior to just your good old username and password. So that's another factor that we're referring to, SMS. We were talking earlier about biometric security, and I've certainly got some exposure to that. The data center from which Oz Hosting operates, if we're to go to the data center, and we're going there all the time, as you know, hard drives fail, and people are going out to replace hard drives and perform maintenance on our physical infrastructure. Before we go out to the data center, we have to actually lodge a visit request with the data center operator, and they require 24 hours notice for that. They need to know the registration number of the car that we'll be arriving in, because we're going to sit at a CCTV tracked gate, and then they will let us in a series of gates with gate airlocks, and then the car will come in. It'll drive up to the building where there's going to be a bulletproof door and a little glass window, and there's an intercom. And then when the door is when we're buzzed through that door, this is where the biometric security starts, and it's multi-factor authentication inside the data center. So we'll step up to a bulletproof glass counter. There'll be a little steel tray. We'll submit our driver's license, which we will have already sent them a copy of in an email, so they will match that up and they'll say, all right, well, the driver's license is matched. Then they'll ask us to step to the left and stare into a retina scanning camera. Our retina will be scanned, and then they will hold onto our driver's license, but then through the little silver tray under the bulletproof glass, they will slide us a plastic card, which is basically a pass, an electronic pass, into the building, and then that pass will only allow us to access the floor and the hall where our physical servers are. And then when we go up there, everywhere we go, we'll have to swipe with the card and stand in front of the retina scanner and get our retina scan. And so, it's a very, very sort of arduous and secure process to get finally into the hall and then access the locked racks where our physical servers are, so that we can do whatever maintenance work it is that we need. But that is a classic, I guess, example of quite intense use of biometric security. And of course, we always have a little bit of a giggle when we're talking to a small business owner that says, "Oh, I don't know that I want to have, my servers in the cloud. I really feel a lot safer that they're here in the office with me." And you think, that office is completely unattended with a big glass door onto the main street from Friday night until Monday morning, and they think that's a secure, storage of their physical servers. But that's our experience with biometric security. But tell us about, for the ordinary business person and the devices that they would operate, what are the sort of the biometric security use cases that you're familiar with?
Yeah, sure. So you're going to see in a lot of this in the small business space is going to be consumer products, or at least SME devices, small to medium-sized enterprise devices that have fingerprint-based authentication built directly onto the device. So your phone will have a fingerprint sensor that will be able to authenticate you, and it will have you touch the device with multiple fingers in different locations in order to be able to get a good sense of your finger versus someone else's and your fingerprints against those. I always tell people to do a number of fingers on different hands so that you can make sure that you can pick up your device with multiple hands and be able to authenticate. And so, you'll see that on certainly smartphones today. Many of them have fingerprint sensors. And then, of course, the iOS devices, iPhone and iPads, will have the Face ID, which is their branded version of facial recognition. Certain Android devices also have facial recognition. A lot of actually the non-Microsoft Surface tablet computers running Windows 10 will have a fingerprint scanner built into the side of the casing, and so you'll be able to do that. What I found is that there's actually it depends on the maker of the hardware, but since they have control over a lot of that biometric connection to the operating system, that is because it's so deep into the BIOS, you have to be really, really careful about which ones use biometric data for purposes of authenticating, not because of it being inherently insecure, but because it breaks a lot. So then you have to like deal with the fact that your hardware is not sensing your fingerprint and you can't get into your computer, and that can be just mildly inconvenient while you're dealing with that. But otherwise, you'll see that on some laptops as well. There are laptop little USB devices that you can actually connect to your laptop that will then add fingerprint identification to those devices. So you have those add-on features as well. So if you really do need that level of security, you can buy these little USB dongles that have a fingerprint scanner on them, and you can just plug them in, install the software, and then it goes ahead and encrypts the drive and only decrypts the drive when you go ahead and scan your fingerprint to it. So you have some additional options as it relates to biometric authentication as a second factor. And sometimes it's a first factor. So be aware of that also, is that sometimes on these devices, for example, the biometric fingerprint or Face ID on your phone, that's a first factor. That's one-factor authentication, right? You look at your phone, you look at your iPhone, and it unlocks. That was it. That was the factor. Second factor and multi-factor means that there's a secondary mechanism in place to authenticate that you are that person. So be aware that a lot of these biometric points of reference should be a second factor. It should actually be in addition to. And again, that's why I said this is mildly inconvenient, but it's about primarily logging into services beyond the initial login to the device itself. So for example, I have software on my device that when I log into it, it will then prompt me to then say that I logged in from my phone. So my phone will prompt me and say, hey, were you just trying to log into Google? And I say yes, and then it allows me to log into my Google account. And that allows me to have the comfort that if somebody in some other location attempts to log into my Google account, my phone's going to prompt me and say, hey, are you trying to log into Google from Azerbaijan or from Indonesia or Russia or wherever else? And I can say, no, that's not me. Click no, and then they're blocked from entry to my account, even though they have access to my username and password clearly because they were able to break in. Who cares? Because they can't ever enter without my physical phone to say yes. I actually have it installed on my watch too, so it prompts me on my Android my Wear OS watch as well. So even if I don't have my phone, I can still authenticate from my watch as well. So those are some ways in which, as you were talking about, biometric can be provided, but remember that it's whether it's second or first factor in terms of its protection.
Right. So Ray, I totally get that you might not want to have that biometric security as your first factor of authentication. Have it as the sort of the second factor to let you through. What is the reliability of these biometric security factors? Do people ever find that they actually can't access a service, a device, because they've used their username and password, but then for whatever reason their retina scan was somehow different or not able to be read accurately, or their fingerprint was incomplete? Is it completely reliable? Is there anything anyone should be concerned about using biometric factors?
It depends on the quality of the hardware. Usually, you're not going to have too many issues. I mean, there's always going to be some negligible number of errors that happen. But for example, a good second factor is when I'm going to make a payment online, I use a lot with the Android-based Google Pay. So it has my credit card information built into it. It prompts me to put in my username and password and then enter whatever payment information. And then it will prompt me and say, hey, are you trying to pay with this card and this particular item? I say yes to it, and then it pops up and says, all right, to authenticate, please place your finger on the fingerprint sensor, and then it reads it and then allows the transaction to go through by decrypting the code that allows the transaction to go through as a second factor. Well, once in a while, the fingerprint reader will fail, right? It won't register that first time, mostly because maybe there's too much oil on my hand, or I touched the wrong part of the sensor, and it will just basically ask you to go ahead and touch the item again. You touch it a few times until it works. I have a tendency to, after washing my hands, your fingerprints are not the same after your hands have absorbed water, and so it will not read the sensor because of that. And so if you are a compulsive hand washer like I am, be aware that fingerprint sensors will be the bane of your existence when trying to second factor into payments. But you get an awareness of those things, and then you know how to work around them. And but that's going to be less of an issue if it's Face ID, for example, with the iPhone. But for example, if you wear glasses, you need to be aware that Face ID may or may not recognize you with or without your glasses, or it will recognize you, but it will reject you with glasses on or glasses off. So there are some things you need to be aware of that are important regarding biometric data. And again, that's typically with mobile devices, not necessarily with desktop computers and web browsing and so on and so forth.
Looking for exposure for your business or event? Take your business, community event, training seminar, sports fixture, function, concert or exhibition to the world with Power TV Australia and Power FM's unique live outside simulcasts. We can turn your next local event into a worldwide sensation with stunning live pictures, interviews, graphics, and live action replays for a fraction of the usual cost. From a festival or sports fixtures to a corporate or charity event, Power TV Australia and Power FM can take your message live to our local and national viewers and listeners. Invite the world to your party by contacting Barry today on 0431 390 920 or email programming@powertvaustralia.com for a quote.
If you've lost your income or had a change of earning capacity through no fault of your own and are struggling with debt that you can no longer handle, you probably feel a bit like this ant. If the struggle is getting you down and you feel overwhelmed, there is an answer. Central Liaison has helped thousands of people break free of the debt struggle by handling their debt for them. Freeze all interest, stop the harassing calls from the bank and start enjoying life again. Call them today on 0409 344 070 for a confidential, obligation-free chat about how Central Liaison can help you take your life back. The number again, 0409 344 070. Call them now.
Is your computer driving you crazy? Is it slow or doing things you didn't expect? Well, having a computer crash or pick up a virus can be a complete nightmare for a business, so having someone local you can trust to get you up and running again is critical. The dedicated team of experts at Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West will put your mind at ease from the moment you walk through the door and will get your problem solved in no time with a 100% guarantee on their work. Laptops, tablets, PCs, whatever you have, Roger and the team can fix it for you. So visit them today at 236 Bridge Street, Newtown. Can't get in to see them? No worries. Just call them on 4642 1331 and they'll come to you. Toowoomba Troubleshooters, Toowoomba West, on the web at www.computertroubleshooters.com.au/Toowoomba West.
Right. Okay. So biometric, we've talked to retinas, facial recognition, fingerprint scans. I guess that's about as far as we can take that. What about another factor of authentication that we all use, which I think is probably a lot more secure than SMS, and probably a lot more convenient than a token, and that's an Authenticator app. I've got a couple of Authenticator apps on my mobile phone. One is for my access to my Office 365 email. Another one is used for my access to our Xero accounting software. Ray, tell us about your experience with authenticators and how you'd rate them as one of the factors to use in a MFA approach to security.
I think these are the top of the line best ways to have a second factor authentication currently today. Until something better comes out, I think that first is email. Except for the inherent insecurity of email, I still think that email is an important second factor. So when we tie that with an Authenticator app, and there are several on the market that are completely free. Microsoft Authenticator app you talked about already is free. You have LastPass Authenticator, you have Google Authenticator. These are all free applications on both Android and iOS. And what happens is you install the application on your phone, you activate the second factor or multi-factor authentication through that service. So you log into your Google account, you log into your Microsoft account, you log into your Apple iCloud account, and you turn on that second factor authentication through the application. And now they do two things. One, they limit your ability to log into the account until you open up that app and engage with it in some way, shape, or form. Some of them provide you with a code that you then enter into the you pick username and password first, and then it says, what's your code? You open up your Authenticator app, it provides you with a code, or it has you engage with the application in some other way, shape, or form. It might tell you to press a button on a particular symbol. It may tell you to tap on a specific area of the screen, and that identifies to it that it's you and your device and not somebody spoofing, pretending to be you. The other thing that it does, and which is really, really important, is that say you have your phone and then you toss it out the window by accident or on purpose, whatever. If that's your other factor to authenticate, and now it's destroyed, you need to have a backup to be able to get into it. Most of these services, and I would argue that all of these services should be giving you what are called backup codes. These are one-time unique codes that allow you to log in if you do not have your Authenticator app available to you. So you would either print them and put them in a safe, or save them as a file on your computer and then encrypt them in some way, shape, or form in a secure place on your device. And those allow you to, should you change devices, right? You get a new phone, now you need to log into that service and change from one app, phone to another with the same Authenticator app. You need to basically use those one-time passwords to be able to do that. So make sure that you keep those one-time passwords for every service that you've identified multi-factor with. I would say this about the entire conversation that we're having. The most important accounts for you to be able to secure are likely your email account. So putting multi-factor authentication on your email means that someone can't get your email password and then go to all the various services like your bank and your other important services, your Xero account, and then reset the passwords, have it emailed to them, and now they have access and they can now go through the password reset process for all of these services. So I think that securing certainly your email and your bank accounts with multi-factor gives you a high level of protection that, some of these other services, someone gets access to your Facebook account. Yes, it's bad maybe if they are ne'er-do-well and they want to do some reputation damage, but they're not going to steal, all the money you have in your account. They're not going to be able to access your Social Security or other kinds of federal ID information from a Facebook account. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world. So I really believe that securing your email and your other primary financial accounts with second factor are really your primary protections against a lot of the fraud and malware that's happening. And then beyond that, you are pretty much secure. So I think, like I said, Google Authenticator, LastPass, and Microsoft Authenticator are the big ones that I usually recommend to people, and that's just because they are native, they're free, they work well with all the systems that are out there. I'm a LastPass password manager user, which we talked about in a prior episode, and so using LastPass Authenticator with some of these tools is just a natural extension because it's an additional application, but it's tightly integrated with the service itself.
Yeah. Okay. I think in terms of the convenience factor, do you regard using MFA as particularly onerous in your sort of day-to-day usage of MFA to access services?
For the most part, no. I mean, we haven't gotten to physical keys, FIDO keys and other types of security keys, which are a little bit more inconvenient because you may or may not carry those on your person. But I always have my smartphone on me. I mean, it's an additional appendage for me right now. So it's very infrequent for me not to have my phone on me. So the additional factor of me opening up the app and pulling up a code and typing it in is now muscle memory. I don't really think about it. The other part is that if you are logging into a device that you feel safe with, you can tell that service, when I log into this device in this location, don't ask me for the second factor. And that's actually quite legitimate because your computer, your mobile device, your laptop, your mobile tablet, whatever, is fixed by a location. And so it's a number, an IP address, Internet Protocol address, and so Doug, your IP, your Internet ISP knows where you are, and it knows your device by IP address and the MAC address of the device, and so it can, with great understanding, great knowledge, know exactly who you are, what device you're on, and where you are. And so if you say, okay, I've second factored into this device, I don't need you to constantly ask me for the second factor when I log in from this location. Well, you take that device and you go out of the country, or even a few towns over, it now knows you've moved and will then ask you for that second factor again because the device may have been stolen. If you're out of the country, it wants to know that it's still you. And so it's actually it's a very useful tool to be able to say, okay, on this device, when I'm in this location, don't ask me again for the second factor. And that actually has streamlined a lot of the redundancy of having to constantly enter second factor codes, because it knows with great certainty and safety that I'm who I am, where I am.
Yeah, that's definitely a feature I make a lot of use of when I see that little button pop up where I can say, don't prompt me again for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever it is. I invariably use that because, I know that I'm pretty safe, and I like to make sure that there is an expiry date at, past which that prompt will occur. That's my other form of protection. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't really find multi-factor authentication a burden at all, and given the downside of the services that I use getting compromised, I'm more than happy to use multi-factor authentication. I think we've covered this MFA pretty comprehensively. Is there any final comments that you'd like to make, Ray?
We haven't talked about security keys or FIDO keys. They do exist. These are usually USB drive-based keys or Bluetooth-enabled keys, and you pair them with the device in order to be able to log into, say, a Google account or Microsoft account. You would have to physically plug in the key to be able to tell it that who you are. And most of them, in this case of the Google Titan key, the USB key, you plug it in and then you press a button physically on the key to tell it that you're who you are. So even if you plugged it in and just left it there, someone wouldn't be able to still log into your account and spoof you, because you have to physically press the button on the USB key. And so there are physical keys that are available. I've actually found it to be a little bit buggy, that I have backup multi-factor authentication on my account, and I found that sometimes the FIDO keys will, from Yubico or from Google Titan, they will, I'll plug it in and then it just won't detect based on a particular service or a particular device that I'm on. And so hardware is actually really important in this case. They need to kind of match up. So just be aware that